emotional episode this week. I can't believe I had to open another box of tissues just to get through it. Oh hey, hi, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 5, Episode 7. And before we get started, I would just like to thank my tipperdoos for the week. Now, of course, these aren't all of them. Some of them I put on my Canada's Drag Race review. But for now, I would like to thank Emily Barrasso. I would also like to thank David Cesar and Adria Fillion. There's also Tan Drag again. Thank you, Tan. And one of my favorite supporters, Leon Plamaker. Thank you so much for not only telling me how to say your name correctly, but for your support, Leon. You're such a good friend to have. Seriously. Okay, so let's get to it. So we started this episode off with the queens looking a little worse for wear. And while they congratulated Cracker on her win, they also acknowledged Alexis as the fierce queen competitor that she was. It's probably why they voted her off. Cracker was just relieved that the decision on who was going home had been removed from her shoulders, which, of course, begged the question from Juju, who had she picked? Well, I don't know why, but she hemmed and hawed and went down a dark and twisted tale of how hard it was for her to pick this person because if it went a different way, it might be awkward. And, of course, that just made Blair assume it was her. She wasn't the only one. And then she showed that she, too, had picked Alexis's name. Oh, God, I think she aged Blair 5 years there. Not that anyone will notice. In fact, the only queen who voted for Blair was Alexis, which disappointed me because I felt there was a missed opportunity there. I mean, Alexis's vote was going to be a solo vote anyway. Why not throw one more at Shay on her way out to make her crazy? What? So I'm the mean girl now? The next day in the workroom, the queens tried to read Alexis's farewell message, but all they seemed to get from it was ass, which should tell you where all of their minds are lately because it really just said AS5. Pigs. Thank God Ru showed up with this week's Maxi Challenge, a stand-up comedy smackdown. The girls would have to perform a stand-up comedy routine in front of a live audience. Now, as a stand-up comic myself, I have to tell you there is nothing harder than watching bad comedy. So I was pretty worried for these queens. But Ru wasn't going to leave them all on their own to create magic. He had Ross Matthews standing by to advise the girls, and Ross wasn't going to be alone. He was going to be joined by a mystery funny lady, which startled me at first because Mystery Funny Lady used to be my drag queen name in high school. I thought it wasn't me. The queens got right down to work spinning air into comedy gold. Or at least they gave it a good old college try, but this was clearly becoming a bigger challenge than most of these queens were ready for. Well, all except for Blair, who the other queens felt already had a leg up because of her signature runway walk. Because Cracker had won last week's challenge, she got to pick the running order of the show this week. And because she's Cracker, she made it a much more drawn-out, dramatic process than it needed to be. Seriously. I mean, all she had to do was point first, second, third, fourth. But no, she started off with some long, drawn-out, tepid, anyone can shine no matter where they are in the show speech. And it all went to a fresh new hell from there. Juju went first because it's the hardest. Blair followed her because Cracker didn't think she could. Cracker followed Blair because she knew she could, and Shay went last because, well, she had to go somewhere. Then it was on to their stand-up writing session with Ross Matthews and, not so secret anymore, funny lady Jane Krakowski. Juju was first and was super relieved to hear from Jane that going first is actually a better position than Cracker had led her to believe. The thing that Juju really had to worry, though, was that her act needed better structure so that her mouth wouldn't be wandering off. Where's it going? Blair's writing session was next, and it started out on a good note for Blair when Jane said that she followed her on Instagram, God bless. And you know, for the most part, Blair's rehearsal went incredibly well. In fact, I was thinking that it's a shame that the other queens didn't get to watch each other rehearse, because if they had, they'd be scared of Blair. Cracker was next, and after she got over the initial shock of being in the same room with Jane Krakowski, they got down to work. And the only real advice Jane and Ross had for Cracker was to get out of her head, stop thinking so much, and to possibly use fewer words. Just get to the joke. Shay was super nervous during her rehearsal, and it showed. What also showed was how weak her material was. Ross felt that she would have done better to talk about losing to Sasha Velour in season 9, and he had a point. If she could channel all those emotions into a humorous anecdote, well, she could win the whole challenge. If she couldn't, she could be in danger, girl. The next day, as the queens got ready, Cracker was feeling confident. Juju distracted herself with a bag of smelly tights, and Shea Coulee was burping the nerves away. And she had a lot to be nervous about, too. She said that she had rewritten her entire set that morning, so to help her get over the nerves, she thought she would wear one of her best dresses. Much to Juju's chagrin. Seriously. Blair was feeling all kinds of confidence over how complimentary Jane and Ross had been during her rehearsal, much to Juju's chagrin. But I have to say, I was a little worried for Blair. It's not always a good thing to be overly confident, especially in comedy. Personally, I like to be a little bit scared. It keeps me on my toes, which can also be cardio. Juju and Shay sounded like they were trying to rattle Cracker by going on and on about how much they loved their spots in the show. Whether they believed it or not is another matter altogether. But we couldn't get caught up in the coulda, woulda, shouldas because it was showtime, and I can't tell anymore if I've just lowered my standards or I actually can't tell a good outfit from a bad one, but I like this dress on Ru. Sure, it was a little lumpy, but the color more than made up for that uniboob Ru had going on. Of course, joining Ru at the VIP table was Michelle Visage, Ross Matthews, and Jane Krakowski, and they were joined by the handsome and hilarious Sam Richardson. Up first, the comedy stylings of Juju B. Now, don't get me wrong, Juju had a few good digs at Ross and Blair's expense, and a brilliant blonde joke that burned Cracker, but her jokes about plastic surgery just lay there like an unwanted implant. And for the most part, the rest of her act seemed a little fractured and, well, not so funny. She certainly didn't make it hard for the next act. I'm so serious. Who was the next act, you ask? Blair St. Clair, and I declare she bit the big banooch on this one. Oh my God, I don't know if she was overly confident or what, but I'm going to say a big part of her problem was that notebook. Oh my God, I thought at one point she was going to put the mic down to flip the page. Seriously. I'm actually surprised that she and Juju brought notebooks out on stage with them. I mean, I get it, you want your notes, but I would have just left it on the stool next to the water. Seriously. But then I'm a professional. And Blair's jokes, whoa, they were so mean. None of those judges got out alive. I was cringing. It was so bad. Although, I will say Blair's performance certainly made Juju feel better about hers. Cracker was next, and although she brought that big old notebook out on stage with her, she left it on the stool. Professional. And she had a great set. Oh my God, that joke about body shaming actually helping her lose weight was hilarious. Looks like it was smart for Cracker to put herself third. Just saying. Closing out the show was the gorgeous Shea Coulee in her stunning red dress. And I have to say, I was worried because Shea had said she'd written that act that morning, but I was super impressed with what she delivered. It was good. Were they the best jokes? No, but they were better than Blair's. And then it was time for the runway. Category is Freak Out. Let your freak flag fly. First down the runway was Juju, who looked stunning in a plethora of houndstooth and plaid. Vivacious, anyone? Blair's freak was fun too, and topical, because of the mask. Cracker came up covered in a cloak and a plague mask to reveal Cher, if she'd been cast in the Mummy. Shea was next, and I have to say, this was the first time that I didn't like her runway. It was pretty basic. Well, for Shea, it was basic. And then it was time for the judges' critiques. Up first was Jujubee. The judges loved her runway, but they said that her comedy was on a slow boil. Sure, she was funny by the end of it, but it was a long and winding road. Blair was another one whose runway was a hit with the judges, although her performance was more of a swing and a miss. They all agreed that her notebook held her back. Cracker was a definite hit with the judges. They loved her runway, they loved her comedy, and most of all, they loved her energy. All in all, this was a good week to be Cracker. Last up was Shea Coulee, and as much as the judges love her, they were less than impressed with her runway. Thank God Shea wore that gorgeous red dress for her comedy set, because not only did the judges love the dress, they were super impressed that she memorized her whole set in just a couple of hours. Well, who wouldn't? So it was no surprise to me that Cracker won her second win in a row, which makes 3 in total, and that puts her 1 ahead of Shea and 2 ahead of Juju. Just saying. So, as you can imagine, the mood in the Untucked lounge was somber, to say the least. All the girls were fretting over being picked to go home, and Cracker was fretting over having to pick one of the girls to go home, although I'm sure she wasn't fretting near as much as they were. But the queen who seemed to fret the most over the prospect of leaving was Blair St. Clair. She was desperate and whiny, understandably, but if those aren't 2 good reasons for sending someone home, I don't know what is. And then it was time to vote and return to the runway, where this week's lip sync assassin was revealed to be none other than Kennedy Davenport. Assassin indeed. This is a queen who flips and kicks her way through every performance, and I was immediately worried for Cracker. Looked like Cracker was too. So I have to admit, I was not impressed by this lip sync at all. I couldn't tell if Kennedy threw it or if she just wasn't a fan of Reba McEntire, but the point is, she didn't even break a sweat. I was so happy when it was all over, just so it would be over. Of course, Cracker was named the winner, and whose lipstick did she have? Well, second time's the charm. I declare it was Blair St. Clair. Sweet baby Jesus. So, top 3. Who do you think will win? Personally, I want Shea to win because I feel she was robbed for season 9. I would like Cracker to win because I don't think anyone's worked harder than her this season. But I would love Juju to win because A, I love her, and B, I just don't think anyone's expecting it. Whose team are you on? All we can do is tune into RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars Season 5 next week for the finale to see how it all falls out. And then when you're done, you come on back and you see me so we can compare notes. Now, before you go, please remember to like my video. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't. And if you'd like to support me and my channel, there are links in the description box down below. Until next week, miss me. Bye.